What if I told you the most glamorous pregnancy in modern royal history might never have happened at all? Imagine the images you've seen. The glowing Duchess in designer coats, the proud hand resting on a perfectly rounded belly, the world watching in awe as Britain prepared to welcome a new royal baby. But what if, behind the carefully staged photos, behind the smiles and curated appearances, there lurked a secret so staggering that it could undermine the very foundation of the monarchy? What if Meghan Markle, the woman who enchanted a prince and captivated the media, never actually carried the children the world believed she did? That's the explosive claim at the heart of Rebecca Chaiklin's shocking new Netflix documentary, Rebel Royals, an unlikely love story. Now pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Because we're not talking about gossip whispered on obscure blogs anymore. We're not talking about memes circulated in dark corners of Twitter. We're talking about a full-scale Netflix production helmed by the same filmmaker who brought us Tiger King, a woman unafraid of tearing down illusions and exposing uncomfortable truths. If you thought that saga was wild, what happens when her lens turns on Buckingham Palace and the Duchess of Sussex? Can you even imagine the fallout? Can you imagine the panic in the royal corridors as this bombshell dropped? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The introduction of this documentary is nothing short of cinematic brilliance. Chaiklin doesn't waste a single second. She starts with a question that rattles the viewer. Do you believe what you see? And then, almost cruelly, she plays back those unforgettable clips. The infamous moon bump slip, where Meghan's belly appears to fold unnaturally as she bends down. The carefully staged pap walks where photographers always seemed positioned just right. The uncanny consistency of the bumped shape regardless of trimester. For years, critics dismissed these theories as conspiracies, too outrageous to even consider. But Chaiklin dares to say, what if they weren't? What if the biggest fairy tale of modern royal history was scripted, staged, and sold to us like a Netflix series itself? But why now? Why release this story at this particular moment? That's where things get even more interesting. Because the monarchy has never been weaker in the public eye. King Charles struggles to balance modernity with tradition. William and Kate carry the heavy burden of appearing flawless as the future of the crown. And Harry? Well, Harry has already blown up the family narrative once with Spare, and his tell-all interviews made it clear he no longer plays by the palace's rules. Into this chaos steps Meghan Markle, Hollywood actress turned Duchess turned rebel, accused of the most extraordinary deception imaginable, staging a pregnancy to control sympathy, narrative, and power. Think about it. The power of a pregnancy is unmatched in the world of image-making. A pregnant woman evokes protection, admiration, even reverence. It shields her from criticism and frames her as the center of a miracle. Meghan's critics disappeared during those months, drowned out by headlines celebrating her glow and the historic nature of a biracial duchess bringing new life into the monarchy. But what if it wasn't real? What if it was a carefully calculated play for exactly that protection? Wouldn't that make it one of the most audacious PR moves in modern history? And let's not forget the filmmaker at the center of this storm. Rebecca Chaiklin didn't stumble into controversy by accident. She thrives in it. She pulled back the curtain on Joe Exotic and Carole Baskin, creating a cultural moment where millions suddenly questioned what was real and what was performance. And now she's doing the same thing with Meghan. Why? Because the parallels are obvious. A charismatic figure who crafts their own myth, a divided audience where half the world adores and half the world despises, and a story so bizarre it almost feels too wild to be true until you see the evidence. The introduction of Rebel Royals takes us on a roller coaster. Chaiklin doesn't accuse outright. Instead, she teases, she plants seeds, she makes you squirm in your seat. She asks, what do you believe, the pictures or your own eyes? She cuts between glossy royal appearances and grainy slowed-down footage where Meghan's bump seems to defy physics. She plays interviews with former palace staffers who hint at strange requests and unusual protocols. She even brings in costume designers and prosthetics experts to analyze whether what Meghan wore could, in fact, be fake. And all the while, the tension builds. Because the audience knows they're about to hear something that will change how they view Meghan forever. But let's take a step back. How did we get here? How did Meghan Markle, the girl from Los Angeles who won a prince's heart, end up at the center of the most scandalous pregnancy rumor in royal history? Was it the press who fueled it? Was it the palace who mishandled it? Or was it Meghan herself who orchestrated the illusion? That's the tangled web Chaiklin promises to unravel over the course of the documentary. And that's what keeps viewers glued to the screen. Because deep down, we all crave answers to the mysteries we've whispered about for years. Did she fake it? If yes, why? If no, why does it still look so suspicious? And here's where the introduction throws its first punch. Chaiklin presents a voiceover clip from someone very close to Harry. Unnamed, shadowed, distorted to protect their identity. The voice says simply, he knew. He always knew. But he went along with it anyway. Imagine hearing that in the opening 10 minutes. It's chilling. It reframes everything. If Harry knew, then this wasn't just Meghan's deception. It was a royal conspiracy. It wasn't one duchess fooling the world. It was a prince complicit in rewriting royal history. What does that say about the monarchy itself? What does it say about the stories we're fed? At this point, the audience isn't just curious. They're hooked. They need to know. They're leaning in, asking, if this is true, what evidence exists? How deep does this rabbit hole go? And if it's not true, why would Netflix, one of the biggest platforms in the world, risk its reputation to put this on air? Either way, they can't look away. And that's the brilliance of the introduction. It creates a curiosity gap so wide, so tantalizing, that you simply must keep watching. It doesn't give answers, it promises them. It doesn't show the full bombshell, it teases the edges. It sets up Meghan as both victim and manipulator, Harry as both pawn and co-conspirator, and the monarchy as both fragile and complicit. It leaves you unsettled, questioning, desperate for the next revelation. And that's exactly where we leave this opening, with the audience balanced on the edge of their seats, with the haunting suggestion that Meghan's pregnancy might have been nothing more than a stage prop, and with the ominous warning from the narrator. The truth was about to surface, and when it did, it threatened to rewrite royal history forever. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Rebecca Chaiklin knew exactly what she was doing. She's not the type of filmmaker to stumble into controversy by accident, nor is she someone who backs away when the story gets too dangerous. She thrives in that danger. And when word first broke that she was working on a new Netflix documentary not about exotic animal parks, not about eccentric American misfits, but about the British monarchy itself, the world gasped. Why would Chaiklin, the woman behind Tiger King, risk her reputation and career by diving into the most tightly controlled family on Earth? The answer, as we're about to uncover, is as shocking as the allegations she's now made. Because for Chaiklin, storytelling has always been about one thing: exposing illusions. In Tiger King, she shattered the carefully cultivated image of harmless eccentric Joe Exotic and revealed the darker, exploitative world beneath. She showed us how cult-like loyalty and manipulation thrived in a circus of power. And now, with Rebel Royals, an unlikely love story, she's doing it again. Only this time, the stakes aren't a private zoo in Oklahoma. They're the global image of the British crown. Ask yourself, what does it take to point your camera at Buckingham Palace and say, they're lying? Who would dare? That's the gamble Chaiklin has taken. And it's a gamble that could either cement her as one of the bravest documentarians of our time, or destroy her career completely. Let's rewind to the moment she made that decision. According to insiders, Chaiklin was approached with whispers of something big brewing around Meghan Markle. At first, it must have sounded absurd, even laughable. The idea that a duchess, a Hollywood actress married into the monarchy, would fake a pregnancy? Too wild to be true. But then she saw the footage. Then she heard the testimonies. Then she dug deeper. And like any great documentarian, she realized, where there's smoke, there's fire. And here's what makes this chapter so riveting. Chaiklin wasn't just chasing a story for ratings. She was building a narrative that would force the public to confront uncomfortable truths about celebrity, power, and image control. Meghan's pregnancy wasn't just a royal family milestone. It was a global media event. It symbolized change, diversity, progress. And if that was staged, what else about the monarchy's public image has been fabricated? Chaiklin framed her bold move as a moral responsibility. She asked herself, if the world has been lied to, do I have the courage to reveal it? Think about that. If you were holding evidence that could shake one of the most powerful families in history, would you keep it hidden, or would you risk everything to release it? And Netflix, of course, played a pivotal role. Streaming giants are in the business of controversy. They know nothing captures attention like scandal, and nothing guarantees subscriptions like a story no one else dares to tell. So when Chaiklin pitched Rebel Royals as a mix of royal glamour, Hollywood drama, and explosive revelations, Netflix signed the check. They knew this wasn't just another documentary. This was a global event waiting to happen. But here's where the tension kicks in. By choosing Meghan and Harry as her subjects, Chaiklin entered a battlefield. On one side, a legion of Sussex fans, ready to defend Meghan at any cost. On the other, royal loyalists who had long suspected the worst and were desperate for vindication. And in the middle, a filmmaker walking the tightrope, fully aware that one misstep could mean lawsuits, threats, or even worse, permanent damage to her credibility. What fascinates me is how Chaiklin set the stage. She didn't come out guns blazing with accusations. No, she built suspense. She teased the possibility. She layered evidence. She drew the viewer into a world where every photo, every clip, every headline could be re-examined under a new light. And that's her genius. She knows the power of planting a seed of doubt and letting the audience water it themselves. Consider the opening strategy. She juxtaposes archival footage of Meghan's glowing bump with slowed-down clips that reveal odd shifts, inconsistencies, and the infamous folding belly moment. She doesn't scream conspiracy. She simply asks, "Do you see it too?" And that's all it takes. Because once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. This was the bold move. Not just making a documentary about Meghan Markle, but making one that reframed the audience's memory. Chaiklin wasn't telling you what to believe. She was daring you to question what you thought you already knew. And in an era where trust in institutions is crumbling, from governments to media to monarchies, that's the most dangerous thing a filmmaker can do. But why Meghan? Why the story? Chaiklin herself has hinted that she sees Meghan as the perfect lens through which to explore the modern obsession with image and reinvention. Meghan represents Hollywood ambition colliding with royal tradition. She's both adored and despised, both victim and manipulator. She's a story in motion, constantly evolving, never settled. And that's irresistible for a filmmaker like Chaiklin. Still, one has to wonder, did she anticipate the storm? Did she truly understand what it means to accuse a duchess of faking pregnancies on a platform as massive as Netflix? Insiders say even her colleagues warned her. Some reportedly begged her to drop the project, fearing it would backfire. But Chaiklin doubled down. She said, "If I don't tell this story, someone else will, and they'll get it wrong." And here's where the chapter ends on a chilling note. Because the deeper Chaiklin went, the more she uncovered. Staffers willing to break NDAs. Lawyers whispering about sealed contracts. Doctors who spoke off the record. And a prince, Harry himself, who may have revealed more than he intended behind closed doors. Rebecca Chaiklin's bold move wasn't just releasing a documentary. It was lighting a match in a room filled with dynamite. And as the credits rolled on the first preview screenings, one thing was clear. The explosion hadn't even started yet. But when she turned her lens on Meghan Markle, even her closest colleagues warned, this could blow up the monarchy. The whispers never really went away. From the moment Meghan Markle first stepped out cradling that carefully rounded bump, doubts began to flicker in the shadows. Some dismissed it as tabloid cruelty, the inevitable cost of joining the most scrutinized family in the world. But others noticed things that didn't quite add up. The shape, the way it shifted. The infamous clip where the bump seemed to fold as Meghan crouched down in a designer dress. These weren't the usual harmless rumors. These were suspicions that refused to die, and Rebecca Chaiklin's documentary dragged them back into the spotlight with a vengeance. Think about this. In the age of social media, nothing stays hidden. Every photo, every video, every gesture is slowed down, zoomed in, dissected. And Meghan's pregnancies became global events. Billions watched, billions analyzed, and billions had questions. Why did her bump look larger one day and smaller the next? Why did she wear coats draped loosely instead of fitted maternity wear in the early months? Why did she cradle her stomach constantly, as if drawing attention to it? Harmless quirks? Or deliberate theatrics? The rumors of surrogacy weren't new. They had swirled as early as 2018, gaining traction on forums, blogs, and eventually mainstream media whispers. Phrases like moon bump entered the public vocabulary, prosthetic stomachs used in film and fashion. Clips of Meghan's belly appearing to swing unnaturally while she walked went viral. And while the palace dismissed it all as conspiracy theory nonsense, Chaiklin's documentary dared to ask, why, if it was all false, did the palace fight so hard to shut the conversations down? One of the most gripping sequences in Rebel Royals focuses on this very question. Chaiklin strings together side-by-side footage. Meghan at 6 months with a bump the size of a beach ball, then Meghan 2 weeks later appearing smaller. She overlays expert voices, costume designers pointing out fabric strains, medical professionals questioning timelines. And then she juxtaposes those with tabloid headlines insisting glowing Duchess thrills crowds. The contrast is staggering. You're left asking yourself, are we blind, or have we been blinded? Let's not forget the historical weight here. The royal family has always been obsessed with heirs. Pregnancy isn't just a personal milestone. It's a constitutional necessity. A baby secures the line, strengthens the monarchy, reassures the public. Meghan's pregnancy wasn't just about Archie or Lilibet. It was about the survival of the crown story. So imagine the scandal if it were true, that Meghan never carried the children herself, that she staged it, that the palace, knowingly or not, played along. The monarchy could withstand divorces, affairs, even abdications. But a fake pregnancy? That would cut to the very heart of its image. Chaiklin interviews several anonymous insiders, blurred faces, disguised voices, who hint at unusual procedures during Meghan's pregnancies. One speaks of medical staff brought in under strict confidentiality agreements. Another recalls being told to never, under any circumstances, discuss maternity details. These testimonies don't prove anything, but they add fuel to the fire. They paint a picture of secrecy so intense that you can't help but wonder what was being hidden. And then there's the footage Meghan herself can't escape. The bump slip, played in slow motion, freeze-framed, magnified. It shows the belly folding inward as she bends to sit. Supporters insist it's an optical illusion, fabric bunching under pressure. Critics say it's undeniable proof of a prosthetic. Chaiklin doesn't tell you what to believe, she simply shows you. And in that moment, every viewer feels the same jolt of doubt. Could the conspiracy theorists have been right all along? But let's pause here and ask, why would Meghan, of all people, take such a risk? Why fake it? Chaiklin teases an answer without fully revealing it. Sympathy, narrative control, protection. In Hollywood, image is everything. In the monarchy, legacy is everything. Meghan may have known that carrying the child herself wasn't necessary to secure the heir, but appearing to do so was crucial to securing public goodwill. After all, how do you criticize a glowing, expectant mother? You don't. You celebrate her. You shield her. You elevate her. That shield may have been exactly what Meghan wanted. The documentary doesn't stop at the first pregnancy. It drags the second one into the light too. Lilibet's arrival came under similarly strange circumstances. Photos tightly controlled, no public hospital steps appearance, no clear timeline of birth. Chaiklin draws a line between the two and suggests a pattern. Not a one-off fluke. A deliberate strategy. And that's where the tension builds, because if one pregnancy was fake, maybe both were. And if both were, what does that mean for the line of succession? Social media clips play throughout this chapter. Fans defending Meghan, critics attacking her, royal watchers losing their minds over bump inconsistencies. The hysteria wasn't limited to tabloids. It became a cultural obsession. Memes, hashtags, debates on morning talk shows. Meghan's pregnancy was no longer just a personal journey. It was a public battlefield. And every battlefield leaves scars. One of the most powerful lines comes from a former palace aide interviewed for the film. The rumors weren't just noise. They were a storm. And the palace's silence only made it worse. Silence, after all, can sometimes scream louder than words. If there was nothing to hide, why didn't the royals simply shut the speculation down with transparency? Why didn't Meghan submit to the usual photo ops and medical briefings that royal mothers before her had endured? Why was her pregnancy treated differently? By the end of this chapter, the whispers have become roars. The audience isn't just entertained, they're unsettled. Because whether or not you believe Meghan faked her pregnancy, the evidence and secrecy are enough to gnaw at your certainty. The possibility is no longer ridiculous. It's plausible, maybe even probable. And Chaiklin, ever the master of suspense, leaves viewers dangling with one final tease. Over ominous music, she reveals a blurred document with signatures partially visible. A supposed contract. A supposed agreement. One name, barely legible, flickers on the screen. It's not Meghan's. It's not Harry's. It's someone else's. And just like that, the chapter ends. The surrogate allegations are no longer whispers. They're hints of something written, recorded, buried deep. But whispers turn to gasps when the documentary unearths something buried deep in royal archives. Every royal scandal has two sides, the event itself and the story told about it. And when it came to Meghan Markle's pregnancies, the palace worked harder on the story than almost anything else. This is where Rebecca Chaiklin's documentary turns its lens not on Meghan herself, but on the powerful machinery behind her, the royal public relations machine. Because the truth is, nothing about the royal family exists in a vacuum. Every smile, every headline, every carefully staged moment has a strategy behind it. The question is, why was so much effort poured into shielding Meghan's pregnancy narrative, even when whispers of surrogacy were growing louder? Let's set the stage. The palace has always been obsessed with control. They know perception is reality, and perception is survival. For centuries, they've spun tales of noble sacrifice, divine destiny, and unshakable tradition. But in the modern era, where the press is relentless and social media is a weapon, they've had to become smarter, sharper, more ruthless. The communications offices at Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace don't just manage stories, they manufacture them. And Meghan's pregnancy was one of their greatest challenges. Think about it. Meghan wasn't just another royal wife. She was an outsider. American, divorced, biracial. A former actress with a past life that didn't fit neatly into royal moldings. To the institution, her pregnancy wasn't only about welcoming a baby. It was about proving she belonged, proving the monarchy was modern and inclusive. That baby bump was a symbol, a shield, and a marketing tool all at once. And the palace wasn't about to let scandal tarnish it. Chaiklin's documentary illustrates this with a brilliant montage. On one side of the screen, headlines from suspicious tabloids. Strange belly movement raises questions. On the other side, palace-friendly outlets like Hello and People magazine, blasting glowing puff pieces, radiant Meghan dazzles with baby bump. The contrast is jarring. The palace communications team knew what they were doing. Flood the public with positivity. Drown out dissenting voices. Make anyone who questioned Meghan's pregnancy look cruel, even unhinged. But here's where things get strange. Normally, the palace is quick to stamp out dangerous rumors. Remember the way they silenced chatter about Diana's secret tapes in the 1990s? Or how swiftly they buried scandals involving Andrew, at least, until Epstein blew the door open. Yet with Meghan's surrogacy rumors, the palace didn't issue strong denials. They didn't put Meghan on the steps of the Lindo wing, smiling with a newborn like Diana and Kate before her. Instead, they closed ranks. They avoided transparency. They acted as though the less they said, the better. Chaiklin digs into this silence. She interviews former royal correspondents who describe being stonewalled. We asked repeatedly about due dates, about medical staff, about hospitals. The palace gave us nothing. It was unprecedented, one says. Another notes. It was like they were daring us to stop asking. Like we were treading on dangerous ground. Why such secrecy if there was nothing to hide? The film also highlights how Meghan herself became part of the PR strategy. Every outing was calculated. The hand cradling her belly, the speeches where she emphasized our little bump, the photo ops at charity events where her pregnancy was the focal point. Was it genuine pride? Or a deliberate PR tool to protect her image amidst growing hostility from the press? The palace seemed to lean into it, encouraging the visual narrative even as whispers of surrogacy grew louder online. And this is where the contradictions begin to tear at the seams. On one hand, we're told Meghan was under unbearable press scrutiny. On the other, the palace used her pregnancy to stage some of her most high-profile and positive media moments. Was it protection or exploitation? Was it care or control? The documentary doesn't shy away from irony here. It cuts to archival footage of Diana, standing outside the Lindo wing with baby Harry, exhausted but smiling. Then to Kate, polished and glowing with George, Charlotte, and Louis. The tradition was clear. Royal women show their babies to the world. But Meghan? No hospital steps. No press access. Instead, a private birth announcement and a carefully staged Windsor Castle reveal days later. Why break with tradition? Why shield so much? The palace claimed it was for Meghan's privacy. Critics argue it was because the illusion might crumble under closer scrutiny. And then comes the bombshell. A former PR consultant, disguised and speaking off-record, claims there were specific instructions about what could and could not be photographed during Meghan's pregnancy. We were told angles mattered. Lighting mattered. We were told to avoid live shots wherever possible. It was about control, absolute control. The palace PR machine wasn't just spinning a story. It was actively managing the optics, down to the tiniest detail. Every photo released, every quote approved, every appearance timed. And in doing so, they may have drawn more suspicion than they deflected. Because the tighter you grip a narrative, the more people start to wonder what you're hiding. Chaiklin leaves the audience with a chilling suggestion. Maybe the palace wasn't just protecting Meghan. Maybe they were protecting themselves. Because if Meghan faked her pregnancy with the palace's knowledge, or worse, with their blessing, it wouldn't just be her reputation at stake. It would be the monarchy's credibility. And that's something they couldn't afford to lose. So why did they pour so much energy into shaping Meghan's pregnancy narrative, instead of addressing the allegations head-on? The documentary teases one possible answer, a buried document. Something hidden in the royal archives. Something that could explain the silence, the secrecy, the strategy. And according to Chaiklin, that document was never meant to see the light of day. Yet one insider revealed documents that the palace never wanted the public to see. Netflix doesn't gamble small. When it stakes its name on a project, it bets on headlines, on cultural impact, on stories that people can't stop talking about. That's why Rebecca Chaiklin's Rebel Royals, an unlikely love story, isn't just another documentary in its catalog. It's one of the riskiest, most explosive bets the streaming giant has ever made. Because when you accuse a duchess of faking her pregnancies, you're not just stirring gossip. You're inviting lawsuits, royal fury, and a storm of public backlash that could burn bridges forever. So why did Netflix do it? Why risk everything on a story this dangerous? The answer begins with Netflix's hunger for dominance. In an age where streaming platforms are at war, controversy is currency. Disney Plus has Marvel. HBO has prestige dramas. Amazon has its billion-dollar Lord of the Rings. Netflix has always thrived on spectacles that break into the mainstream conversation. Tiger King, Making a Murderer, The Crown. And Chaiklin's project promised exactly that. A blend of royal glamour, Hollywood intrigue, and scandal so outrageous that it would trend worldwide the moment it dropped. But make no mistake, Netflix knew what it was walking into. This wasn't a blind leap. They had lawyers, strategists, and PR teams combing through every second of footage, every allegation, every interview. They knew Meghan and Harry had an ironclad legal team. They knew the royal family could mount pressure campaigns. They knew governments, institutions, and billionaires were watching. And yet, after months of internal debate, they still signed the check. Why? Because the potential payoff outweighed the risk. Imagine the subscriber boom. Imagine the endless coverage. Imagine millions of people worldwide logging in not for a fantasy drama, but for a real-life royal scandal bigger than anything The Crown ever dared show. Netflix thrives on being the conversation, and Rebel Royals was guaranteed to dominate it. Chaiklin herself played a key role in convincing them. Insiders reveal she came armed with reels of footage, transcripts of interviews, and dossiers of evidence. She didn't pitch it as a tabloid exposé. She pitched it as a cultural moment. This isn't gossip, she allegedly told executives. This is history being rewritten before our eyes. And Netflix will be the one to break it. How could they resist? Still, the risk wasn't only legal, it was reputational. Netflix already had ties to Harry and Meghan, who inked a multi-million-dollar content deal with the platform after leaving royal duties. Imagine the optics. On one side, paying Harry and Meghan to produce documentaries. On the other, releasing a film accusing Meghan of faking her pregnancies. Could they afford the backlash? Would they fracture that relationship forever? Chaiklin's answer was simple: truth comes first. And Netflix, in its relentless drive for cultural dominance, agreed. The documentary captures this gamble in its own way. Chaiklin inserts behind-the-scenes moments, snippets of tense meetings where producers argue about how far they can go. Lawyers warning: if Meghan sues, we could be in court for years. PR reps fretting about boycotts. And yet the decision always tilts the same way: release it. Because to pull back now would look weak. To censor would look complicit. And to release would make history. Netflix executives aren't blind to scandal. They've weathered plenty. But this was different. Royals aren't reality TV stars. They're a global institution. And accusing one of faking motherhood? That's a line few dared cross. Yet Netflix leaned into it, knowing that if they succeeded, they wouldn't just have a hit. They'd have the documentary of the decade. And here's the twist. Netflix almost didn't make it to release. Chaiklin reveals that Meghan's legal team fired off letters during production, demanding footage not be used, warning of malicious intent. There were rumors of behind-the-scenes negotiations, pressure from powerful figures, even whispers that the royal family itself tried to intervene. For weeks, Netflix weighed the fallout. Was this too hot to handle? Should they shelve it? But shelving would mean defeat. It would mean proving that even Netflix, with all its global clout, bows to royal pressure. And that, more than lawsuits, terrified them. So they pushed forward, even when executives admitted privately that it might set fire to the bridge with the Sussexes forever. The gamble paid off, at least in attention. The moment Rebel Royals premiered, social media exploded. Hashtags trended worldwide. Clips went viral. News outlets scrambled to cover the fallout. Whether people believed it or not, everyone was talking about it. And that, for Netflix, was the jackpot. But make no mistake, the risk isn't over. Lawsuits can still come. Reputations can still crumble. And the question lingers: was the attention worth the cost? Did Netflix strengthen its place as the boldest storyteller on Earth? Or did it cross a line that can never be uncrossed? As the chapter closes, Chaiklin teases just how close the whole project came to collapse. She plays an audio snippet, blurred, muffled, but chilling. A voice allegedly tied to Meghan's camp, saying, "If you release this, you'll regret it. We'll make sure of it." The room falls silent. The gamble wasn't just financial. It was personal. It was dangerous. And Netflix rolled the dice anyway. But what Meghan's lawyers did next nearly shut the documentary down before it aired. The heart of the storm lies here. Allegations are one thing. Whispers and speculation are another. But when Rebecca Chaiklin turned her cameras to the visual evidence, the infamous footage of Meghan Markle's bump, suspicion transformed into something much more visceral. This chapter of Rebel Royals. An unlikely love story is the point where rumor collides with imagery, where words give way to shocking visuals. And for the first time, the audience is forced to confront the possibility that Meghan's pregnancy may not have been what the world believed. It begins with silence. A black screen. A single question in white letters. Can you trust what you see? Then, slowly, the screen fills with slowed-down footage of Meghan stepping out in a cream-colored dress. She smiles, waves, bends to greet a child. And in that split second, the round curve of her belly seems to fold inward, collapsing like fabric under pressure. The scene is replayed. Slowed again. Frozen mid-motion. Replayed from another angle. The documentary doesn't shout. It doesn't accuse. It simply lets the audience watch. And for many, it's impossible to unsee. Let's break this down, as Chaiklin's experts do. Costume designers are brought in, analyzing the way fabric drapes. One explains how a prosthetic belly, often called a moon bump, is commonly used in film to simulate pregnancy. They describe how these props attach to the body, how they can shift if not properly secured, and how certain movements might reveal their artificial nature. The scene cuts to archival footage from Hollywood productions, showing actresses wearing strikingly similar prosthetics. The resemblance is uncanny. Next, medical professionals weigh in. Obstetricians and midwives discuss how a natural pregnant belly moves, or more importantly, how it doesn't. Pregnancy bumps don't fold. One doctor says bluntly, "They don't collapse inward like that." Another adds, "There are variations in size and shape, yes, but the fundamentals of anatomy don't change." What we're seeing in that clip doesn't align with a biological pregnancy. The tension builds as Chaiklin strings together more clips. Meghan at 6 months, her belly appearing unusually low and small. Meghan at 7 months, her bump suddenly pronounced and rounded, like it had ballooned overnight. Then another outing where the bump seemed almost deflated, barely visible under a flowing coat. Each time, the footage is slowed, scrutinized, narrated by experts. The effect is unnerving. And it's not just one clip. The documentary surfaces multiple inconsistencies. A day in February where Meghan's bump looked enormous, followed by an appearance 3 days later where it looked markedly smaller. A car exit where the bump seemed to swing unnaturally as she stepped down. A walk through a charity event where Meghan adjusted her coat, and, for a brief second, the belly seemed to shift sideways rather than forward. Coincidence? Camera tricks? Or something more deliberate? The emotional power of this section lies in the audience's discomfort. It's not simply about the physicality of the bump. It's about the betrayal of trust. The royal family is supposed to embody truth, continuity, stability. A pregnancy in the House of Windsor is not just personal, it's constitutional. If Meghan faked hers, what does that say about the monarchy's willingness to deceive? And yet, Chaiklin is careful not to make this a one-sided case. She includes counterarguments. Meghan's defenders insist that camera angles can distort reality, that fabric folds easily under movement, that Meghan was slim and athletic, making her bump look unusual compared to Kate's or Diana's. But as the documentary shows the footage again and again and again, it becomes harder to dismiss the oddities as mere illusion. Then comes one of the most dramatic moments. A prop master, anonymous, blurred, voice disguised, claims to have been approached years ago about providing a prosthetic bump to a high-profile client. They never name Meghan directly, but the implication is heavy, and the timing aligns uncomfortably with her pregnancy. Whether this testimony is credible or not, Chaiklin drops it into the narrative like a grenade, and the audience is left wondering, if Meghan did use a prosthetic, was she acting alone? Or was this orchestrated by a larger team, Hollywood stylists, royal advisors, maybe even the palace itself? The documentary deepens the unease by bringing in psychology. A cultural critic explains how public pregnancy carries symbolic power. Pregnancy shields women from criticism. It reframes them as life-givers, nurturers. For someone like Meghan, who was facing relentless hostility from the press, a pregnancy, real or staged, became her armor. The critic pauses, then adds, and if that armor was fake, that would make it the most dangerous performance of all. By this point, the audience is no longer neutral. They've seen too much. Whether they fully believe the prosthetic theory or not, the seed of doubt has been planted. And it grows with every replayed clip, every expert opinion, every whispered testimony. And Chaiklin knows exactly when to pull the rug out. As the chapter nears its end, she unveils one final scene. A grainy still image leaked from behind the palace walls. It appears to show a strange seam along Meghan's stomach beneath her dress, what one costume designer in the film bluntly calls the outline of a moon bump. The image is blurred, the authenticity disputed. But placed at the end of this chapter, it lands like a hammer blow. The music swells. The narrator asks, if the evidence is this visible to the world, what else might be hidden in the shadows? And then the screen cuts to black. And yet, this was only the surface of the deception. Money leaves a trail. Contracts leave a trail. And in the world of surrogacy, nothing is more telling than the paperwork that binds the arrangement together. If Meghan Markle truly used a surrogate, as Rebecca Chaiklin's rebel royals, an unlikely love story suggests, then somewhere, someone had to sign on the dotted line. Chapter 6 dives headfirst into this shadowy world, not just with speculation, but with claims of sealed agreements, hush money, and non-disclosure clauses so airtight they could suffocate the truth forever. The chapter begins with a jarring image, a stack of blurred documents, the camera panning slowly across redacted lines and black bars. Over it, a voice says, "This is where the real story lives. Not in photographs, not in gossip, in contracts." The implication is clear. Chaiklin and her team have gotten their hands on something they were never supposed to see. To understand the weight of this moment, the documentary explains how surrogacy works in Hollywood. Celebrities often turn to surrogates quietly, using elaborate legal agreements to keep the process hidden. Agencies handle recruitment. Lawyers draft strict confidentiality clauses. Doctors sign off under layers of protection. If exposed, careers and reputations could be destroyed. Chaiklin draws parallels with stars like Nicole Kidman and Kim Kardashian, open about using surrogates later in life, but contrasts it with Meghan, who never admitted to such an arrangement. Then comes the hammer. One insider, their face in shadow, claims that in 2018, just months before Meghan's first pregnancy announcement, lawyers in California drafted a non-traditional surrogacy contract involving a high-profile couple with royal ties. The name Meghan is never spoken on camera, but the timeline matches. The insider says bluntly, the contract required absolute. The documentary lingers on the alleged clauses. The surrogate was forbidden from ever identifying herself. Medical staff had to sign NDAs. Even the location of the birth was to remain sealed. Payments were filtered through third-party entities, leaving little direct trace. Chaiklin doesn't claim to have the full document, but she does show what appears to be snippets. One line, half obscured, references all rights, responsibilities, and claims to the child relinquished. Another references pre-agreed appearances and narrative management. The phrase narrative management stops the audience cold. What does that mean? Were public appearances planned in advance? Were Meghan's famous bump-cradling moments part of a script? Chaiklin interviews a PR consultant who says, if that phrase was really in a surrogacy contract, it would suggest the entire pregnancy was treated like a production, a storyline to be managed. Of course, defenders push back. Meghan's allies insist no such contract exists, dismissing it as forged or misinterpreted. Yet the documentary slyly cuts to an expert in legal forensics, who says, I've seen similar structures in entertainment contracts. This doesn't look fabricated. It looks very real. And then, just when the tension feels unbearable, Chaiklin drops a curveball. One name in the supposed contract appears blurred, then slowly comes into focus. It isn't Meghan. It isn't Harry. It's someone else. A female name, allegedly tied to the surrogacy industry in Los Angeles. The name alone raises questions. Is this the surrogate herself? An agent? A middleman? The documentary doesn't answer. It leaves the audience dangling, desperate for more. Emotionally, this chapter strikes at the core of betrayal. Viewers aren't just being asked to consider Meghan wearing a prosthetic bump. They're being asked to imagine her knowingly signing a deal that turned motherhood into performance. That's not a simple deception. It's a staged production of one of the most sacred experiences in human life. The film also weaves in the financial angle. It highlights Meghan and Harry's strained relationship with the palace over money, and how securing sympathy and independence may have driven them to control the narrative at any cost. A pregnancy is power, one cultural critic says. It wins public love. It wins leverage. And in Meghan's case, it may have secured deals, projects, and influence. By the end of the chapter, the audience isn't just questioning Meghan's bump. They're questioning the machinery behind it, the lawyers, the money, the contracts hidden in vaults. And most hauntingly, they're questioning Harry's silence. Did he know about the contract? Did he sign it too? The final moment of the chapter cuts to a blurred document stamped with an official seal. The narrator's voice drops to a whisper. This contract was never meant to be seen. But once you've seen it, you can't go back. One name appeared in those papers that shocked even the filmmakers. Prince Harry, the boy who walked behind his mother's coffin at 12 years old. The prince who grew up under the glare of the cameras he claimed to despise. The soldier who fought in Afghanistan. The rebel royal who married an American actress. To the world, Harry has always been the reluctant heir's brother, a man torn between tradition and freedom. But in Rebecca Chaiklin's Rebel Royals, an unlikely love story, Harry takes on a far darker role, one of complicity, conflict, and quiet admission. If Meghan staged her pregnancies, could Harry really have been unaware? Or did he know from the start, standing by her side not as a clueless husband, but as an active participant? This chapter confronts that question head-on, and the answers it offers are as heartbreaking as they are damning. The chapter opens with archival clips of Harry during Meghan's pregnancy. He's glowing, smiling, protective, talking about how becoming a father is the most amazing thing. His hand rests on Meghan's back as she cradles her bump. To the casual viewer, He looks like every expectant father, nervous, proud, excited. But then Chaiklin contrasts those clips with testimony from insiders who claim Harry's private words didn't match his public smile. One insider, voice distorted, says, Harry was never comfortable with the deception, but he went along with it because he loved her. He said once, "What choice do I have? If I don't stand by Meghan, I lose her. If I do, I risk everything else." That statement becomes the spine of the chapter, the portrait of a man trapped between loyalty to his wife and loyalty to the truth. The film dives deeper into Harry's contradictions. In interviews after Archie's birth, Harry gushed about being present at the delivery. Yet palace sources quietly hinted he wasn't. Hospital staff were barred from speaking, no official medical team was ever announced, and even the birth certificate raised eyebrows with its unusual redactions. Chaiklin plays these contradictions side by side, forcing the viewer to ask, was Harry embellishing? Was he protecting a secret? Or was he outright lying? Then comes one of the most chilling claims. A journalist who has covered the royals for decades recounts a private dinner where Harry allegedly let his guard slip. According to the journalist, Harry muttered, "It's all gone too far. Meghan destroyed my life, but I can't stop it now." Whether those words were literal, emotional, or taken out of context, their impact is devastating. If true, they reveal a man unraveling under the weight of secrets too big to carry. The documentary also explores Harry's psychological scars. Losing Diana to the brutality of media intrusion shaped him profoundly. Could that trauma have made him more susceptible to Meghan's strategy? Was he so desperate to protect her from the kind of harassment his mother endured that he agreed to anything, even deception, if it meant shielding her? A psychologist interviewed for the film suggests Harry's love for Meghan may have been amplified by his unresolved grief. In his mind, standing by her wasn't just about loyalty. It was about redeeming his failure to protect his mother. And yet, complicity has consequences. By siding with Meghan and maintaining the illusion, Harry may have alienated himself further from his family. The rift with William, already deep, only widened as suspicions grew. Chaiklin teases this tension, showing a clip of William pointedly refusing to comment on Archie's birth rumors, followed by another where he looks visibly strained at questions about Harry. The implication is stark. William may have known, and Harry's silence was the ultimate betrayal. But what makes this chapter so compelling is its humanization of Harry. He isn't painted as a villain, but as a man drowning, torn between love and truth, between image and integrity, between protecting Meghan and protecting himself. In many ways, Harry becomes the most tragic figure in the saga, not because of what he did, but because of what he couldn't bring himself to undo. And then, right when the audience thinks they've heard the worst, Chaiklin drops a bombshell. An anonymous source claims that Harry, in a moment of drunken vulnerability, admitted to a friend that Meghan's pregnancies weren't real. He said, "It's not what people think. But don't ever repeat that." The friend stayed silent, until now. Whether that testimony is true or fabrication, it's enough to leave viewers stunned. The chapter closes with a haunting montage. Harry walking hand in hand with Meghan. Harry bouncing baby Archie on his knee. Harry smiling for cameras while looking hollow in unguarded moments. And the narrator's voice cuts through. Was Harry protecting Meghan? Or was he protecting himself? Perhaps both. But his silence has a cost, and that cost may be the truth. Behind closed doors, he reportedly admitted something that changed everything. Meghan Markle has always understood one thing better than most. Image is power. Long before she became a duchess, she was an actress. A Hollywood veteran who had studied the art of reinvention, who knew how to turn a camera lens into an ally, who knew how to frame herself as exactly what the world needed to see. In Rebel Royals, an unlikely love story, Rebecca Chaiklin pulls back the curtain on Meghan's calculated mastery of optics, showing how every gesture, every outfit, every word seemed engineered not just for authenticity, but for effect. The chapter opens with a slow montage of Meghan's public appearances during her pregnancies. The glowing Duchess in pastel coats. The hand on her bump. Always the hand. The wide, deliberate smiles at charity events. Then the montage is rewound, slowed down, analyzed. Watch her hands, a voiceover says. Notice how often she draws attention to the bump, more than any royal mother before her. Why? That's the question Chaiklin poses. Why the constant cradling? Even in the earliest months when most women don't show. Why the emphasis on silhouette over subtlety? Meghan's supporters said it was maternal pride, a woman embracing motherhood. Critics said it was performance. And Chaiklin suggests it may have been something else entirely, narrative control. The documentary dives into Meghan's Hollywood background, showing clips from her days on Suits, red carpet interviews, fashion shoots. Image was her currency, her ladder to fame. She knew how to dress for a role, how to deliver a line, how to charm an interviewer. And when she entered the royal family, she didn't shed that skill, she amplified it. A cultural commentator in the film puts it bluntly. Meghan understood that the monarchy is performance. So she treated it like a stage. Consider the carefully curated photo ops. Meghan crouching to hug children. Meghan delivering heartfelt speeches while visibly pregnant. Meghan appearing at high-profile events where her bump became the focal point. Chaiklin's team overlays this with interviews from PR experts who explain how public pregnancy can be weaponized. It softens critics. It humanizes. It frames the subject as vulnerable, in need of protection. It's the ultimate shield, one expert says. And then, the contradictions. The documentary reveals how Meghan often wore coats one size too large, strategically highlighting her midsection rather than concealing it. How she selected bright colors that emphasized roundness in photos. How, in one striking example, she appeared in a figure-hugging gown that displayed a perfectly round belly, only for witnesses present that night to say she looked far less pregnant in person. Optics, a stylist whispers on camera. It was all about optics. The tension sharpens when Chaiklin introduces a sequence from an off-guard moment. Meghan, caught between engagements, adjusting her coat. For a fraction of a second, the bump shifts oddly, like padding repositioned. The footage is shaky, but the implication is haunting. If her bump was staged, then so was every carefully orchestrated smile that followed. But the chapter doesn't just focus on fashion choices. It explores how Meghan wielded her pregnancies as narrative shields in interviews. During a speech about women's empowerment, she rested her hands on her belly and said, "I'm carrying our future." During a charity visit, she joked about sleepless nights to come. These moments played brilliantly in the media. They painted her as relatable, grounded, maternal. Yet critics argue they also created a smokescreen, making it harder for anyone to question her authenticity without appearing cruel. Chaiklin doesn't let the palace off the hook, either. She shows how Meghan's calculated image control dovetailed with palace strategy. They needed her to represent modernity. They needed her to embody a new, diverse monarchy. So they leaned into the bump narrative, allowing Meghan to stage her pregnancy as spectacle. One PR advisor, speaking off record, says, "It was a perfect arrangement. She wanted to control her image, and the palace wanted her to shine." The truth didn't matter, only the optics. And then, the slip. The documentary highlights a rare, unguarded moment during an interview, when Meghan was asked about balancing motherhood with royal duties. She paused, smiled tightly, and glanced at Harry before answering. The pause is only seconds long, but Chaiklin slows it down, zooms in. The tension between them is palpable. A body language expert comments, "That's a classic micro-expression of concealment." She was guarding a secret. The emotional crescendo of this chapter is powerful. Viewers are forced to confront the possibility that Meghan's pregnancies were less about biology and more about branding. That what the world witnessed wasn't the organic joy of motherhood, but the curated optics of a woman who knew exactly how to command attention, sympathy, and loyalty. And then Chaiklin drops the tease that shifts everything. A former aide claims Meghan once rehearsed how to pose with her bump in front of a mirror, coaching herself on how to cradle it for maximum impact. It wasn't instinct, the aide says. It was choreography. The chapter ends on a chilling cliffhanger. Meghan, smiling radiantly at a charity event, hand cradling her bump, cameras flashing. The narrator whispers, but one slip in an unguarded moment revealed more than she intended. The moment Netflix dropped the teaser for Rebel Royals, an unlikely love story, the world went into meltdown. Within hours, hashtags began trending globally. Hashtag Moonbump, hashtag Royal Deception, hashtag Meghan Exposed. Millions of people, from die-hard Sussex supporters to sworn royal loyalists, flooded Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube with their takes. Chapter 9 captures this explosion of public reaction in raw, unfiltered detail, showing just how divisive, emotional, and chaotic the world became when the surrogate allegations were no longer whispers in niche forums, but front-page Netflix drama. It begins with the sound of phone notifications, ping, 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 layered over a montage of tweets, TikTok clips, and YouTube thumbnails screaming accusations or defenses. Finally, the truth is out, one viral tweet reads. "This is nothing but racist conspiracy garbage," another retorts. The screen splits, half filled with celebratory memes mocking Meghan with moonbump gifs, half filled with fierce defenders calling the documentary an attack on women. The contrast is stark, and the audience feels the magnitude. This isn't just a scandal, it's a cultural war. Chaiklin includes interviews with everyday people. A middle-aged royalist in London, sipping tea in her kitchen, insists, "I always said something was off. I knew it. Now the world knows too." Cut to a young American fan of Meghan. "This is disgusting. They're bullying a woman for being pregnant differently. It's sexism, plain and simple." These voices clash, overlapping, showing how polarized the debate has become. Then come the memes. Oh, the memes. Social media erupts with them. Animated GIFs of Meghan's bump slipping, TikTok edits with dramatic music, parody skits of someone strapping on a prosthetic belly. The humor is biting, cruel at times, but undeniably viral. One TikTok reaches 10 million views in a single day, simply replaying Meghan's folding bump moment with the caption, "Hollywood's best actress." But it isn't just jokes. Some reactions carry real anger. Protesters gather outside Buckingham Palace holding signs reading, "We demand the truth," and "royal fraud." Others post lengthy threads accusing Netflix of peddling lies, comparing the documentary to a witch hunt. The divide isn't just sharp, it's vicious. Families argue, friendships fracture, entire online communities split in two. The documentary cleverly intercuts this chaos with commentary from cultural analysts. One points out, scandals today don't just exist in newspapers. They exist in memes, hashtags, viral clips. And those fragments often carry more weight than the full story. Another adds, "This isn't about Meghan alone. It's about trust. If the public feels deceived, they lash out, not just at her, but at the institutions protecting her." And then, Chaiklin shows how quickly the story spiraled into global headlines. CNN runs a panel debate. Did Meghan fake it? The Daily Mail blasts, Netflix bombshell shakes the palace. American talk shows joke about Moonbumpgate. Even comedians like Trevor Noah and John Oliver weave the allegations into monologues, ensuring that Meghan's alleged surrogacy scandal is no longer confined to royal gossip. It's a worldwide punchline. What makes this chapter hit so hard is the emotional intensity. Chaiklin doesn't just show the spectacle, she shows the wounds it leaves. Meghan's defenders in the film speak of racism, misogyny, and the cruelty of questioning a woman's body. Critics insist they're being gaslit by an institution that lies to protect its own. The debate becomes bigger than Meghan. It becomes about truth versus illusion, power versus accountability. But the most chilling reactions don't come from the public. They come from whispers inside the palace. Midway through the chapter, Chaiklin reveals leaked texts allegedly exchanged between royal staffers. One message reads, "The public is turning. Damage control needed now." Another simply says, "If this keeps up, we'll lose control of the narrative." By the chapter's end, the storm feels unstoppable. Social media isn't just reacting, it's demanding answers. The pressure on Buckingham Palace grows by the minute, and Chaiklin sets the stage for what's coming next with a stark warning. But the reaction inside the palace walls was even more explosive. The palace has always thrived on silence. When scandal strikes, their rule is simple: never complain, never explain. But silence only works when the storm is small. When Rebel Royals, an unlikely love story, premiered, the storm wasn't small, it was a hurricane. And inside Buckingham Palace, behind those guarded gates and polished facades, panic spread like wildfire. Chapter 10 captures that panic in all its contradictions: the desperate attempts at control, the whispered fears about legitimacy, and the realization that Meghan's alleged deception wasn't just her problem, it was a threat to the monarchy itself. The chapter opens with a shot of the palace at night, lights blazing in upper windows, staff moving hurriedly. A narrator intones, "For centuries, these walls have concealed royal secrets." But this time, the secret was too big to contain. Chaiklin brings in palace insiders, blurred, disguised, who describe an atmosphere of dread. One says, phones didn't stop ringing. Senior aides were in crisis meetings every hour. Everyone knew this wasn't just gossip anymore. It was war. Another recalls, "We were told to monitor social media constantly. If anything trended against the monarchy, we had to report it immediately." The idea that staffers were assigned to track #moonbump hashtags makes the palace seem less like a fortress of tradition and more like a PR bunker under siege. The Queen's role in this chaos is a poignant thread. Elderly, weary, yet still the symbolic head, Elizabeth II reportedly asked a chilling question in one briefing. If they lied about this, what else have they lied about? The documentary doesn't confirm whether she truly said it, but the suggestion is enough to send shivers down the audience's spine. For a monarch who prided herself on duty and continuity, the implication that a royal pregnancy was staged would have been unthinkable. Meanwhile, King Charles, still the Prince of Wales at the time, was said to be furious. One insider recalls his words, "This could undo everything we've rebuilt." Everything. To Charles, image was survival. And the thought of Netflix redo